Personally, the biggest demon that I wrestle with is just self-doubt. There's so much competition out there. There's so many amazing picture books out there. You know, it's easy to look at Twitter and see all these people posting art and talking about art, and it's easy to kind of compare yourself and feel like, oh, I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not doing work that's exciting, I'm not leveling up. I think it's easy to just kind of get down on yourself and, for me, lose sight of what I really want to do.
We are back once again with the Pencil Kings podcast. This is episode 43, and today we're talking to children's storybook artist Erin McGuire. I think this is a great topic a lot of people are interested in. Why don't you give people just a quick 1 to 2 minute overview of what you're working on these days, and so that people can get a sense of what your work is like?
Sure. I'm working on a couple books currently, a book with Disney Hyperion. I'm also the cover artist for Nancy Drew, so those are kind of always ongoing. I'm also working on a series with Scholastic and a couple covers right now. So pretty full plate, but pretty fun range of projects right now.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you weren't always focused solely on children's books, were you?
I actually started out as a concept artist at Real Effects Studios. I worked there for about 5 years, working on a lot of different commercial projects and animation projects, and at the same time started freelancing on the side doing children's books. And it got to the point where I was freelancing so much that I had to make a decision between the two careers, and I really loved the children's book field and industry, so I decided to quit my job and go completely freelance about 2 years ago.
That's awesome. I'm really fascinated by people who make career changes. How did it work for you? Were you like to be noticed online, or were you actively soliciting jobs? For me, I feel like I have no clue how I'd get started with children's books other than to make my own and put it up on Amazon, but that's clearly not the path that you took.
Right. I hadn't even been trying to get work at the time. I think I was pretty lucky. I was just doing new work that I liked and putting it up on my blog, and also selling prints online. And a blogger for Publishers Weekly posted one of my images for I think it was like reading related gifts. And I had an illustration of like a woman in a library. And just from that, that newsletter goes out to the whole publishing industry. I ended up with kind of a lot of traffic to my blog from that, and ended up with my first book job from Candlewick, and ended up getting a children's book agent from that also. So, I know that's not the easiest formula to replicate, but I would just say, always be making new work and putting it up on your website and gently talking about it. I try to post on Facebook and Twitter, but try to post about other people and other things too.
I actually think that we could reverse engineer this, that if somebody listening to this feels that their work is up to snuff and wants to get noticed, the takeaway from what you just told me was that there's groups of people that can hire you, and you have to get noticed. And there's people inside those groups that is looking for content to serve to those people. So if you have something that's relevant, or if you can position your own art in a way that's kind of interesting to them, who knows, Right.
And also, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators has been a really big help to me. I had already started getting work before I started going to their conferences, but their conferences are a fantastic way to meet people in the industry and to get noticed, and just kind of get a pulse on what the industry is doing and kind of the range of work within the industry. So I highly recommend those for people who are interested in writing and or illustrating their own books.
I get the sense talking to you that you're like one cool customer. Like none of this stuff phases you. For me, I feel like if I got contacted to do my first children's book and I was already busy with a day job, that I would be kind of freaking out, not sure what to do. But I don't know, just there's this confidence in your voice that is just like, yeah, cool, children's book, and you just rocked it.
I don't know about that. I had plenty of doubts along the way too. But thank you.
So, well, let's dive into that a little bit. So you got noticed, and somebody said, "Hey, we love your work." And meanwhile, you're seeing all these lots more comments on your blog, and probably selling more prints. And then somebody comes in and says, hey, are you interested to do a children's book? Do you just then jump at the opportunity, or did you have to mull it over for a while? What does it look like from the inside?
Well, one of the art directors from Candlewick had emailed me, and they actually asked me to do an art test. So I did. I did kind of like a sample illustration. They kind of gave me like a quick summary of what the book would be about. I've had to do that several times to win a job. Like I had to do that for Nancy Drew and several other projects. They'll kind of give me a little rundown, and then I kind of send them a quick study of what I think would work as an approach for that character or that book. From that, they, had awarded me the job. And then, how I work now is I send all the info to my agent, and she helps me with the contract and all of that.
The whole idea of an art agent, I don't think I've talked to anyone yet specifically that has an agent. I'm sure there's people that have worked with agents, but it's something completely foreign to me. You finished your first book and then you looked for an agent. Do agents find you? What's the deal?
I would say both. In my case, they found me, and I'm represented by Writer's House. So I started off with one of their junior agents, and after she left, they moved me to one of the senior agents. You can submit to them, but in my case, I was fortunate that they found me. I had just started my first picture book job shortly after signed on with an agent. So from then on, they handled all my deals. And it's been wonderful so far. There's a bit of a difference between a literary agent and an art rep, and mine is definitely a literary agent. So for work outside of the publishing industry, I wouldn't be using them.
Okay. It's just this load off of you where they know what's going on and what jobs are coming up. You can just focus on doing the work and being the best artist that you can be, instead of having to participate in the quote unquote hustle that everybody talks about of finding their next gig.
Right. And where they really come in handy for me has been contracts, invoices, and anytime there's a problem with a job, which isn't often, but if something happens with a deadline, or if something happens where the client is asking for more than we had signed on for, it's been really nice to just kind of have someone who's on your team, who's advocating for you. It's been just a really good relationship. If I did have my own book project that I wanted to try to get a book deal for, they would be the person to do that for me also, which is pretty cool because it's hard.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so let's take a couple steps back to you're working as a concept artist. What kind of work are you putting onto your blog at that time? Because I know for a lot of people, they've reached out and said that they would like to create a children's book, but they're just not sure what the next steps are. So I'm really curious about what your blog looked like back then, because when I look at concept artist blogs, I don't necessarily get the children's vibe. What did it look like for you specifically?
Right out of school, which was when I started as a concept artist, my work was all over the place. I really didn't know what kind of work I wanted to do. I didn't even think I had concept art work. And luckily, Real Effects at the time was looking for artists with a big range and with kind of different styles than the typical concept artist. So I was doing a little bit of everything for them. I did a lot of concept art for commercial projects. So, they needed kind of someone to be a chameleon on 100 different commercials. That was actually kind of a good testing ground for me to kind of figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. At my animation job, they always said that my stuff looked too storybook. And when I first started doing children's books, they told me it looked too Disney, which I think is their code word for it looks too much like animation. So I kind of felt like I was in this weird in-between where I wasn't quite right for one field or the other. But I did a lot of sketchbook work, kind of a lot of the same stuff that I had been doing. And then I started going to children's book sections in bookstores more. I've always been an avid reader, and I actually worked in the library at my college, which was kind of a second education in itself as far as books go. And I just started kind of looking at the type of work that was getting work. And there had been a lot of children's book illustrators that I had really admired and hadn't really made the leap that, oh, this is something I can do also. And then also kind of a very fortuitous connection at Real Effects was William Joyce. And I know you had interviewed Adam Volker, who's working over at Moonbot. Adam and I worked with William Joyce kind of before Moonbot started. So that was kind of a cool connection for me to even see, like, oh, here's someone who is in between the animation and children's book world. And this is what it looks like. This is what a career in it looks like. And that was kind of the epiphany moment for me of like, hey, this is what I want to do. And kind of started directing my work in that direction from that point on.
Very cool.
I have something more. Something none of your dry as dust professors and routine-ridden doctors have. Love, devotion, passion.
What do you feel the opportunities are for somebody that wants to become a children's book illustrator? Is it something that's super hard to get into? Is it, I feel like video games and visual effects is sort of like once you're in, you're in. It can be a little bit hard to get in, but if you had somebody mentor you, it would be a lot easier. What does it look like for children's book illustrations?
It is very competitive. It's a wonderful job and it's a wonderful field. And so naturally, a lot of people want to do it. Also, it's the type of thing where I think everyone thinks they can do it. You know, I meet countless people who, when they find out I illustrate children's books, like, oh, I have an idea for a children's book. And, you know, I have to kind of tell them like, oh, well, I work with publishers. And I think everyone kind of assumes that they have the first new idea and it's for kids, so it must be easy. Whereas it actually is a difficult field to get into. I think I saw an agent who said that she looks at 100,000 submissions a year and from that picks 30. That's for writing. I think it's a little bit different for illustration, but it's a competitive field. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think this is actually kind of a great time for children's books right now. You know, the sales are way up for picture books. And, you know, it's actually one of the fastest growing segments of the book industry right now. A lot of people think we're in a new golden age of picture books. And just judging by the quality that's been coming out in the past few years, I think it's for sure true. So I think it's like any other field. If you know what you want to do and if you have an excellent product, then it's a lot easier. As far as the breaking in, I think there is a bit of a snowball effect. Once you start working with one publisher, if you do a great job, then they kind of just pass you around the studio. It's kind of funny. Like I'll start working with one publisher and then I'll all of a sudden get two more jobs from that same publisher just because I think my work is going around the studio and, we need that girl too. So there is definitely a snowball effect and a threshold that you have to get past, but it might take a couple jobs.
Definitely makes sense. All right. So the next thing I want to ask is, what is a day in the life of a children's book illustrator really like? I have my idea here that there's like a cat walking around your feet and you've got like a tea going, something that smells really nice. And there's like a view out of a window and it's very peaceful, although there's no music playing. You got hardwood floors. What is it actually like?
You pretty much described like my exact situation right now. I have a mug of coffee next to my cat who's in her cat bed, and I'm looking at my hardwood floors and looking out the window at some pretty trees.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
Yeah. But it can be like that. It can be really wonderful. Sometimes I take my sketchbooks and I go and sit out. I have like a little sunroom where I go and sit with the cats and draw all day. And then other days I'm chained to my computer and, just kind of hunched over Photoshop all day. So I'd say a typical day, I'm usually pretty useless in the morning. So I have coffee and sketch for a bit. And then I answer any emails I need to answer, do any businessy invoice type things. And then usually after lunch, I have a list of projects I'm working on and I determine what is the squeakiest wheel, so to speak, and then work on that one for a while, email back and forth with art directors, whatever I need to do. And I have a longer term project. That's the Disney Hyperion book that I'm working on. So kind of once I get caught up with the pressing stuff, I work on the longer term project. If I'm really caught up on stuff, then I'll do some personal work, or if it's nice, I'll go to the bookstore and look at books too.
So it sounds like there's sort of a nice ebb and flow, and sometimes it's hectic and then sometimes it's not. And then you've got your long-term project to fill in any gaps. Yeah, it sounds pretty ideal.
Yeah, it can be really hectic sometimes. Lately, especially, it's been a lot of work until dinner time, eat dinner, get back to the computer and keep working, till late at night. And those times are fine too, because I feel like then I've earned a day off. If I do get caught up, then I can just kind of take the day off and just sketch and not worry so much about the paid jobs.
I don't know if this is too personal, so you can decline the question if you want, but do you ever find that you feel guilty if you're on that schedule where you're working and then you just kind of eat and then you work and your significant other is giving you a little bit of a stink eye? Like, not an obvious stink eye, but it's just like you feel it. I've been in this mode lately, and I'm just wondering if, just because you mentioned it, it brought up my kind of feelings. And I'm wondering if you get the same thing, or if it's totally cool and this is your work and your significant other accepts that.
At first, I felt really guilty. I think it was a year or two ago. I had caught up on everything and I had nothing to work on. And I just, went into utter despair thinking, oh, I'm never going to get a job again. I'm never going to, my career's over. I may as well throw in the towel. But whereas I should have enjoyed it and I should have used it as a time to do my own project or something else. And my husband actually, instead of the stink eye, I more get the hey, relax and enjoy it while you can, because you're going to be busy again. So he's really supportive and really encourages me not to freak out too much. I think I probably put it on myself more than anyone else does. It can be hard to enjoy a day off, but I'm trying to just remember that hey, they're few and far between. I became a freelancer specifically so I could have a schedule like this, so I may as well enjoy it while I can.
Yeah, definitely. I know so many people have this idealized view, well, I do as well, of what a children's book illustrator's life is like. What are some of the things that you don't like about it, or that if you had your choice, you'd take it away? Like, for those people with sort of stars in their eyes, what's the realistic picture of it? You've already given us, some idea that you really have to work hard at this. You really put in your evenings. You're not sitting watching Game of Thrones if you've got a deadline.
Right. I'd say for me personally, the biggest demon that I wrestle with is just self-doubt. There's so much competition out there. There's so many amazing picture books out there. It's easy to look at Twitter and see all these people posting art and talking about art, and it's easy to kind of compare yourself and feel like, oh, I'm not working hard enough, or I'm not doing work that's exciting, I'm not leveling up. I think it's easy to just kind of get down on yourself and, for me, lose sight of what I really want to do. So for that, I just try to block out all that noise. I have a little app on my computer that will block Facebook and Twitter and everything so that I can focus. That kind of helps. As far as other pitfalls, just the publishing industry is very slow. So I always tell people, when they get all excited about working in the children's book industry, I tell them it's a very slow moving industry. Books can take years to finish. So that means that you don't get paid for years. You don't see that money right away. So I try to tell people, you have to have a really long runway so that you're getting paid regularly. Otherwise, if you get one job in January, you might not see that money until October.
It kind of blows my mind that a book could take, over a year. I'm used to fast production schedules of working in video games or working in film where everything has to be done yesterday. How could it take a year? Is it licensing issues that holds things up, going back and forth with legal approvals? Or
the book I'm working on now, I've been working on for a year and a couple months. And that time it's eaten up by feedback, really. I'll do sketches, I'll send it to them. They're probably working on 100 other books. So, it might take 2 or 3 months to get feedback on sketches. So,
Whoa.
Yeah, wow. It's kind of crazy. So, then I go to work on something else. And then when that job comes back around, I do my fixes, send it back. It might be another month before I get feedback. Not all the jobs take that long. Certainly covers are much faster. I'd say a cover is 3 weeks to a month. And a lot of that is still feedback time. So, Yeah, like Nancy Drew, I had finished covers for that years before they came out. I almost equate it to like the fashion schedule where they have a spring release and a fall release. So, they have things on catalog systems where they have stuff that's slated for the fall release. And so if it doesn't make it into this year's fall release, well, then it has to come out in spring. And so, that's another 6 months you have to wait.
Right.
So it's a big industry, and they work on so many books at one time that just kind of everything gets a little bogged down.
How do you keep your head in the right space when you might be a month or 2 months before you get feedback on something? By keeping the consistent style, sort of like this is my style, and so it's always easy to get back into it? Or do you have some other tricks that you use?
Yeah, it is a little hard to switch gears when, I haven't worked on a project in a while. If it's something where it's a character that I've had to draw a lot, like Nancy Drew, that is pretty quick for me to get back into because I've done so many covers for it. So I'll just spend a few minutes just doing some sketches of her just to get myself back in that mindset. I'll look through the sketches I've done for other books for her and kind of my older covers and make sure I'm not repeating myself too many times. Kind of do a couple little warm-ups and kind of get in the right mindset. But if I have to switch gears really fast, it does kind of mess me up a little bit. Like I do some stuff for younger kids, and so then I'm making everyone too lanky or look like teenagers when they're supposed to be little kids. And so I have to kind of like, okay, remember how to draw little kids.
Gotcha. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I was talking with somebody earlier today, and he was wondering how to come up with a style. And so we were talking about how that all works. But it's interesting hearing you speak to it, somebody that's drawing every single day, that even you sort of like get out of your style or out of the mode of whatever you're doing. And you have to kind of just gut check or mentally check and say, like, right, what am I doing again? And then do some sketches and get back into the mode of creating kids that are 5 years younger than what your previous project. Fascinating.
It's interesting going to the different children's book conventions. Hearing authors talk about style is interesting because they talk more in terms of voice. And so I try to think more in terms of voice than style. I think style, it's almost more surface level, where voice, you can know someone and you can talk to someone and they can be saying vastly different things, but it's still them and you still kind of know the core of who they are. So I try to think of style in that same way, where it's still me drawing it, but sometimes you speak a little louder, sometimes you speak a little softer, but it's still the same essence of the voice that you're trying to put forward.
Interesting. Everybody always just talks about style. You're the first person I've heard speak to it in terms of voice. It's really interesting.
I think it, I breathe it. Look out at the rain. Where anybody sees only a drop of water rolling down the window, I see a universe of beings animated with all the passions common to physical life.
Let's finish off with where you're headed. Children's book sales are going way up. People are talking about that this is a new golden age of children's publishing. What do you think is bringing it all on?
Well, actually, there's some interesting theories about it. A lot of people think back a couple years, you think of the Harry Potter boom. It was all of a sudden everyone's buying middle grade books. And then those kids grew up a little and read Twilight, and there was this big YA boom, young adult was the big boom. And now those people have grown up and are having kids, and, they grew up with books that they loved. And so you could almost see it as the booms are very cyclical. So, it was middle grade, then it was YA, and now those people who grew up with a love of books, maybe they're old enough to have kids and buying their own books for kids now.
Okay.
That's kind of one theory. Definitely YA is still having a boom, but the style changes. It goes from, paranormal's big. Now Fault in Our Stars is big. Middle grade is big again, So I think this is just the point in the cycle where children's books are getting this new love and attention. And I think also there's just a lot of talent right now, just this really rich source of talent that is working right now between John Klassen and Adam Rex and Mac Barnett and all them. It's just kind of this really exciting time for creators right now. And I think people are realizing that it's a pretty serious medium that actually can tell some really beautiful stories. I think it's just kind of luck meets the talent that's out there that's kind of fueling this excitement for that particular genre.
Awesome. I love that the way that you broke it all down, especially with the cyclical trends, it all makes sense. I would have guessed that it was the sort of advent of iPads, and that if you mix digital with traditional sales, then things go through the roof because the distribution is so much faster and easier now.
There is definitely a kind of growing iPad market, but the numbers have still shown that the majority of sales for specifically little kids is still paper books, because parents really like sitting and having this kind of big widescreen format when they read to their kids. So yeah, I'd say it's a combination of the two, but parents really still like a paper book that they can sit with, and, you know, the kid can turn the page, and, you know, the page turn is kind of its own format even in a book, where it's a reveal for a joke or it's a punchline. It's still a format I think that kids really enjoy. Yeah,
definitely. I'm thinking about my little niece and how my brother reads to her and how much she enjoys that. So where do you fit into the golden age? What's coming up for you? What's exciting for the future?
Oh, I don't know if I'm part of that golden age, but as far as for what I want to do in the future, I'm really excited about the projects I have now. I'm really excited for them to come out. And my number one goal is to start doing my own books, you know, start writing my own stuff and do the author illustrator thing. You know, there's a lot of stories that I'm really passionate about that I'd really like to start doing my own projects too.
Awesome. That's the perfect place to end this episode. So why don't you let people know where they can find you online, and then we'll wrap this up.
Sure. I am at emcguire.net. Also, I am on Twitter at E_McGuire_, and on all the different formats. I'm on Instagram at emcguire and emcguire.net.
Perfect. And we'll have this episode along with the show notes and links to anything that we mentioned in this episode at pencilkings.com/Erin-McGuire. That'll be ERIN-MCGUIRE. So see you on the blog, and if you do hop over there, leave a comment, and we'd love to hear from you. So thanks so much, Erin. I really appreciate it. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this, because there's so many aspiring children's book illustrators in our community.
Great. Thank you so much.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.
For back episodes, show notes, and a couple of other goodies that you're going to have to find out for yourself, head on over to pencilkings.com/podcast.